So welcome to those of you who are watching us on YouTube to the Maths Grade 4 to 7 Term 1 and Term 2 workshop with Sharp, both the 535 SA and the S25, depending on the level of your students and how many students you have. All right. And Jessica, that is true. Not teaching integers is a bit of a pain as well. Okay. So here's the plan for today. So the things with stars next to them, wow, that's just shockingly bad. The concepts or factors or topics with stars next to them are specifically for grade 7. But do stick around if you want to see how it all works, and it might help you apply certain things in the lower grades as well. And the calculator we're going to be using is both the 535, which has 422 functions. We do recommend it from, say, about halfway through grade 6. And this calculator will take you all the way through to matric. It is approved by the Department of Education as well. It's non-graphical, graphical, non-programmable, and all of that. We're also going to work with the S25, which is really nice for grade 3 to 6 math students. You can give it to the grade 2s. You can do the quiz function with it. So it's really a choice, a preference. Then, of course, some worksheets that are available to download. The simulator is for the calculator that I'm going to use today. So you can download that and use it in your own class. It's particularly nice when we start teaching them calculator skills and we want to show them where different buttons are and what different buttons do. Then, of course, there's a whole list of worksheets here. For grade 4 to 7, what's particularly nice is the eClassroom website, although it is now subscription based, which is a bit of a pain. And then mathdrills.com has got a lot of practice questions, so that's really nice. And then worksheetworks.com is awesome for younger people, particularly grade 4 to 7. And what's nice is you can customize your worksheets. So you can choose levels and all of that, which makes it very, very user-friendly. So check that out as well. And then the mathsjourney.com has got grade 7 worksheets as well as some grade 8 to 9, but they're advanced grade 7, essentially, worksheets. Okay, so some important buttons. Obviously, your on button, your second function button, which will just activate any orange functions on your keys. And I'll go through that in a little bit. Then your alpha button, which we won't really use in grade 4 to 7 at all. Then your mode button, which just allows you to choose your different modes, and we'll get into that in a sec. And then, of course, BS is for backspace. So if you want to delete something, like the backspace button on your PC. Then change is here, and change just changes the way your answers look. So it's really nice for converting between fractions and decimals, and I'll show you how to use that as well. And then, of course, your equals button, which will give you the solution to whatever you typed in. Now, for the S25, you've got the solar panels, so your batteries are going to last longer. We've got a drill mode set of buttons, and I'll jump into that in a little bit. And then, of course, your CA and CE. So CA means clear all, and CCE means clear the previous instruction. So if you said 50 plus 30 and you said CE, it would delete the plus 30, not the 50 plus 30. Whereas if you press clear all, it would delete 50 plus 30. That's the difference between the two. So when you're doing the drill mode, if you wanted to delete, you typed in an answer by accident, then you would use CCE. If you wanted to exit the drill mode, then you would use the clear all button. Then, of course, you've got pi, which just saves it as 0.14, so it's just the value of 3.14. Your integer button, which is your plus and minus button, your percentage button, and your equals button. So the various modes on the 535 is the normal mode, where we'll do things like fractions. I'll show you how to use, how to find the highest common factor and lowest common multiple. You've got stats, which we obviously won't cover today. Table, I'll show you how to find multiples of a number and factor pairs of a number, and how to use those multiples to teach long division. And then, of course, our drill mode, which is our very first thing that we're going to jump into. So for mental maths, On the S25, you have a Q button, which allows you to choose how many questions. So that's 25, 50, or 100 questions. Then next to that, you have the plus minus, on the other side, you have the plus minus times divide button. So plus does questions of 0 to 20 plus 0 to 20. Subtraction will do the opposite of that. Multiplication does 0 to 12 times 0 to 12. And division obviously does the opposite of multiplication, except that you cannot divide by 0, so it doesn't ask about division by 0. You can also do counting ins on your S25. So what that does is if you press your times table button, it allows you to choose what you want to count in. So you can choose between 1 and 12. So if we choose 7, you'll see here that it's 7 times 1. Then the next question will be 7 times 2, 7 times 3. So you're counting in by answering 7, 14, and 21. Now we can also do this on our 535. I'll show you because it works exactly the same way. So we'll go to drill mode and we'll choose 0 for math. Okay, then you've got questions, which are 25, 50, or 100 questions. You've got plus, minus, times, divide, which follow exactly the same parameters as the S25 does. So if, for example, we're talking about multiples and we want to just practice doing multiplication, or we want to practice division, we're going to teach long division, for example, then we can press equals, and all of the questions will now be division questions. Then you would type in your answer, press equals, and get a new question. Sure, this calculator thinks I drink coffee today. If you type in the wrong answer, you'll see that it will mark it wrong and then repeat the question over again. And it's very patient. It's going to keep asking you until you get the question right. If you don't know the answer, you can ask the calculator for help with both the S25 and the 535 by just leaving your space blank and pressing equals. It will then show you what the answer is, and you can move on to your next question. Okay, so next time we see 108 divided by 9, we know that the answer is 12. So we're learning from our mistakes as well, which is really cool. Now I'm just going to skip through these questions. I'm not going to get any marks for them. As you can see, there's no ticks because I haven't actually answered anything. So let's just go through here, answer the last question. Now you'll see press enter, which is your equals button. And you'll see that I got a mark, which is 2 correct out of 25 questions, or 8%. And that's how the drill mode works. Now, if we did 3 for drill and we chose 1 for table or multiplication, then what the S25 does is it does it in order. So it does it in serial. And so what you'd see is 5, 10. So this is the counting ins function on the S25. On the 535, you have an additional function where you can choose to do it randomly instead. And then you will only practice the 5 times table questions. So you'll see now it will only give you 5 times questions, but they'll be in a mixed order so that it's better. They should have learned it. Hi, BB. Thanks for joining us. So that's the same thing there. And this is not on the S25. This is the only difference between the 535 and the S25. Well, not the only difference in the drill mode between the 535 and the S25. So here's all the instructions. I will share the PDF with you at the end in the chat function so that once you get your calculator, you can then go through and see. Okay, so I want to show you a really nice shortcut for long division and helping teach long division. So on your calculator, we're now going to go to table mode. So you're going to press mode and 2 for table. And we're going to find the multiples of a number. So let's say we want the multiples of 7. So we would say 7, oopsie, and we would press this button here that says RCL. You press it twice and it makes an X for you. Okay, so basically we're saying 7 times a value. Okay, and then you just scroll through a table. You don't need to change anything else. And what you get is 0 times 7 is 0, 1 times 7 is 7, 2 times 7 is 14, 3 times 7 is 21, and so on and so forth. Now, this is where it gets really exciting because we can use this to help us with long division. So I'm going to pull my calculator back up and share so that you can see both my screen and the calculator. Here we go. I just want to move that across here. Okay, so what we really need is the screen here. So here's my pen. So I've got 896. Forgive my hands. Okay, so 896, right? So 7 goes into 8, we know is easy. It's once, 1 times. So this is where daddy, mommy, sister, brother comes in, that rhyme that I was talking about in the beginning. So now, if I've done daddy divide, then I need to say mommy multiply. So 1 times 7 is 7. Then sister subtract gives me 1. And brother bring down gives me 9. Okay, now, if we go look on our table, we're looking for a value that is either 19 or less than 19. So here we can see that 21 is too high, so it must be 14, which is 2. So 7 goes into 19 twice. 2 times 7 is this 14 that we found, so we can just put it here. And then we subtract, and we bring down our 6. Now again, we go to our table, and now we're looking for the value of 56 or something less than 56. So if we scroll through, we can see there's 56 here at 8. So 7 goes into 56 exactly 8 times. So there we go. So 8 times 7 is 56. And we are now done, and we've completed our long division. Now I was demonstrating now this is a really easy version of this, okay? So I wanted to show you what you could do if, say, for example, we divided 896 by 15. So what we would do on the calculator is, let me just move it over, we would say 15 times x equals. Okay, here's our table. And then we'd have 15 goes into 896, and we'd say, okay, 15 doesn't go into 8, so 15 goes into 89. And now we can scroll down our table and look for where it's less than 89. So it's 90 is 6, so 89 is less than 90, so we're going to use 5. So we'll have 5. 5 times 15 is 75, so we put that down over here. Subtract. 9 minus 5 is 4, and 8 minus 7 is 1. We bring down our 6. We've got 146. Now again, we go look at our table and we see if we can find something for less than or equal to 146. So 150 is too big, so we'll use 9, which is 135. So we'll have 9 here. 9 goes into 15, or 9 times 15 is 135. So we'll just pull that up here. And then we say subtract, so it's 1 and 1, and there's, oopsie, there's nothing to borrow or bring down. So our 11 is our remainder. And now we're done. Hi, Patricia, thanks for joining us. So that's the difference. Well, that's how we would use long division and our multiples function to do long division. Okay. I'm still drawing apparently. Okay, there we go. Now then, are there any questions there? Are we all happy with that long division and the instructions there? Okay, great, fantastic. So number patterns. So what's nice here is that you can generate a number pattern, and we can do it with both the S25 and the 535. So these steps are actually on the 535. So if I show you quickly, say, for example, you started off with 3. I'm just going to press home here, and home just takes me back to normal mode from whichever other mode I was in. So if we start with 3 and our pattern is to keep adding 5 each time, then we can say plus 5, and now we have answer plus 5. So instead of having to say plus 5 plus 5, we can just keep pressing equals, and it will generate that pattern for us. And we can do the same thing on the S25 as well. So here's a video where we are subtracting 5 each time. And now with the S25, you don't have to keep saying -5. It will just allow you to do it. So it doesn't have to be that additional step. So it's a little bit easier with the S25. Okay, then of course you also have the constant ratio. So if you want to multiply something, say our constant is multiplied by 2, then you can see here again, we would just have to times 2 equals, and then times 2 equals again on the 535. But on the S25, if you did it, you would not have to do it. So here you'd see times 2 and equals, and this one here will multiply by 5 instead of by 2. So it multiplies by the thing in the front and not the thing at the end. Okay, so that's just the difference between the two of them. Then, of course, we also have input and output values. So this is using our table and actually just creating a number sentence or a formula here. So our sentence is 10 times whatever our input value is plus 2 is equal to, and we'll just go through the table. And here you can see if our input value is 1, our output value is 12. If our input value is 10, our output value is 102. What makes your table mode really nice and very user-friendly is that it is unlimited. So you can go for as long as you like, and you're not going to run out of space with your input values. So that's also really cool. And even though we started at 0, and I went very far back here, I do want to go back. It's coming. So even though we started at 0, you can also go up into your negative integer sign. And we can talk through 10 times -2 is -20 plus 2 is -18. So that's just an interesting one, especially for grade 7 when we start talking through teaching integers and so on. Now, common fractions, so much fun. So I just want to show you the different ways that you can input a fraction. Okay, so again, we're going to go to home. The first way is to use your fraction button. Okay, and so if we have a fraction, we can put in our numerator and we press down and we type in our denominator. Then we exit the fraction by pressing our right arrow button. Okay. The short version is to first type in your numerator and then press your fraction button. And you'll see now it automatically hops up on top and your denominator is now what is highlighted, blinking. It will actually blink physically on your calculator. And then you can type in your denominator. Okay, so that's the two ways with just proper fractions. If you have a mixed number fraction, you would need to type in the whole number and then tell the calculator that you are adding a fraction to it by saying second function and your fraction button. Okay, and then typing in your numerator and denominator. And then you can also press your fraction button first and then press your left arrow key and just add the whole number in the front. Now, the other scientific calculators will assume that you're multiplying, but in our case with the sharp, you are not multiplying, it is simply adding it to the fraction. So it's assuming that it's 5 plus 4 sevenths. Okay, and that's because that's intuitive. If you're putting a number in front of your fraction, it must be because it's a whole number and it's attached to your fraction. Okay, and then if we press equals, you'll see that our answer is correct. And here, where you change, you can change from a mixed number to an improper fraction to a recurring, which I'll turn on for you, to a normal decimal. Okay, so to turn on a recurring decimal, you would press setup and you would choose number 5 for recurring decimal, and then you would just press 1 to turn it on. It's not so important for now, but for the grade 7s, I think we do some work with recurring fractions. Then, of course, you can also convert your decimals, your fractions to decimals, and it's as simple as, it's as simple as typing the fraction into your calculator, so pressing on first, typing the fraction in, and pressing equals, and then change. Easy, easy, easy. If we had 1/8, oops, same, and then change. So you can see it's really easy to convert and check those conversions. If you wanted to convert a decimal into a fraction, you would type in the decimal and just press equals, and it will do that conversion for you as well. So it's a very nice way, again, to check your answers and make sure you're getting them correct. Here are the steps for the recurring decimal, which we already did. But it's nice to know that you can do it. Okay. Then, of course, we can talk to finding factor pairs of a number. So that's really easy to do. Again, we're going to use our wonderful table mode. So we're going to press 2 for table. And then let's say, for example, you want the factor pairs of 120. You press 120, press your fraction button, press RCL twice to make an X, and equals, 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 equals. And now anything divided by 0 is undefined, which is where this little stripy line comes from. So this little stripy line becomes important in grade 10 when we start talking about asymptotes. But an asymptote is essentially a line that is undefined. In other words, we try to divide by 0 at that point in the graph and we couldn't. So it's a very important reiteration of a core concept, which is anything divided by 0 is undefined. Okay. Then we've got our factor pairs of 120, or 1 and 120, 2 and 60, 3 and 40, 4 and 30, 5 and 24, 6 and 20, 7 is not a factor because it has a decimal answer, 8 and 15, 9 is not a factor, 10 and 12, 11 is not a factor, and then we've got 12 and 10. So we've reached our capacity and we now have all of our factor pairs here for us. Now, one of the great questions that came up in a previous webinar was how big could we make this number? And the answer is as big as you like. Really, it's up to you. I mean, I've done 12,000 here, which is ridiculous because it takes us a long time to find those factor pairs, but you can find them all because you can just scroll through the table and look. So it's really nice and easy for finding factor pairs of numbers. Then we can also find prime factors of a number. So this is particularly nice for the grade 7s. And here we're going to go home again to normal mode. So home is just a shortcut, if I haven't mentioned before, to your normal mode from whatever other mode you are in. It's very handy. Unfortunately, it doesn't take us home, but at least it takes us back to where we're comfortable and we know what we're doing, right? So if you wanted to find factor pairs of, say, 81, right? You could say 81 equals, and then press second function and exp. You'll see in orange above it, it says p fact. So that second function is activating that p function, p factorization or prime factorization function, which is there. Now, if you have a number that is not a prime factor, you'll see that when we do the prime factorization, if you look at that decimal point at the back, it will actually disappear. So that tells you that 31, that the calculator did try and prime factorize it. And the only prime factor that this number has is itself. So that's just a heads up on that one as well. Okay. So we mentioned integers right at the beginning of the session, and we're talking about how difficult it is. Sorry, to teach particularly. But I do want to share with you just a fun calculator thing. So here, if, for example, we wanted to check our answers and we pressed 5 minus 9, it's going to give us an error because it's going to assume that you typed too many minuses in. Okay, so what you need to do is actually use your negative button in front of your number here. And that will just, so the minus is a function and the negative is a value. So that's just the difference between the two. Now, of course, if we were in table mode, we could also say, and a nice way to teach this is, okay, if I have a positive number and I multiply it by a negative number, what's going to happen? So if I go look at my table, I'll see a positive times a negative is a negative, and you will see that there. And if I have a negative times a positive, I'll get a negative number as well. So that's just an interesting thing to look out for as well. Now, This here worksheet is a worksheet for integers. It does work for grade 7 and grade 8. So you can use it. It's good for grade 7 revision for integers. So help yourself. All right. Functions, any questions? Are we all still happy? Awesome. Functions and relationships. So just some quick theory. You've got your input values, which are values that change the result of the answer. So I was explaining it yesterday as it's what you put into your cake. So it's whether you put cocoa into your cake, chocolate chips, or cinnamon, or coffee, or 3 eggs or 4 eggs, it will change what your cake gives you. So your output value is your actual cake. So it will give me a chocolate cake, or it'll give me a spice cake, or a fruit cake, or a carrot cake, depending on my ingredients. Or if I don't add enough eggs, my cake will be flat. I like baking. So you can see that your input values are independent and your output values depend very much on the ingredients that go into what you're doing with your cake. Okay, then a flow diagram just shows you what is actually going on with your input, what's happening to your input, and why it produces that specific output. So this actually comes from the mathsjourney.com, this picture here. And there's a whole long article on functions and relationships in the Maths Journey as well. Then, of course, tables, we're not talking about our tables where we eat, but we're talking about the table of values like we had in table mode. And then, of course, the difference between an equation and a formula is an equation is a relationship between any set of variables, whereas a formula is an equation that is specific to a situation. So the formula for an area is an equation. Its area is equal to length times breadth. That's an equation, but it's specific to a certain situation because the area of a circle does not have the same formula as the area of a square. So again, here's a link to patterns, functions, functions and relationships graphs for grade 8. There's also a really nice worksheet for functions and relationships on the Maths Journey as well. Then, of course, you can create a table from an equation given to you if there's only one input. And again, it's just in table mode. So say, for example, we had 3x plus 2. Now we can create a table. So these would be our input values, and these would be our output values. And again, because your table is unlimited in either direction, you can put whatever input or output values you have, and it will work for you there. All right. Oh, I was right. So thank you so much for joining us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe and share with your buddies. And then, of course, for those free worksheets and the simulator, you can visit Maths at Sharp.